Mexico's government is suing 11 major US gun makers for their role in the illegal cross-border trade of arms. The lawsuit accuses Baretta USA, Smith & Wesson and others of fueling drug-related violence in the country. It's seeking up to $10 billion in compensation, along with stricter enforcement of gun controls. Mobin Nasir reports.
Instead of being shunned, these armed vigilantes are being welcomed by the residents of Pantelo. The people of this town in the southern Mexican state of Chiapas say they are tired of living in fear of drug cartels and gangs, so they formed their own defense force called the Machete.
The people have grown tired of so much violence, so much injustice and threats.
For the West, in Guerrero State, corn farmers are arming and training their children to fend off attacks by the cartels that occupy the hills around their communities. And similar groups are cropping up in many other parts of the country as people take the law into their own hands to protect their lives and property. Law enforcement agencies and other officials have been accused of conspiring with drug cartels. But they say criminal gangs are much better armed and funded, so taking them on is getting harder. Mexico's government has long blamed US weapons manufacturers for facilitating crime and violence.
The arms companies are developing different models for narcos. They are very valuable. There are different types ranging from look to usage.
Now they're suing some of America's biggest gun makers. Officials say more than 500,000 guns are trafficked into Mexico from the US every year. Of the 2.5 million illegal guns smuggled into Mexico over the past decade, nearly 70% were manufactured by 11 US gun makers. Now the Mexican government wants them to pay up to $10 billion in compensation and tighten controls on the sale of weapons. While the US government has not issued a response, a trade association for the US firearms industry has denied the charges.
These allegations are baseless. The Mexican government is responsible for the rampant crime and corruption within its borders.
Legal experts say US laws that limit the liability of arms manufacturers will make it difficult for Mexico to win this lawsuit, and the unabated flow of weapons into the country can only worsen the spiraling violence in Mexico. Mobin Nasir, TRT World.
For more, lawyer and social commentator Haynes Davis joins us now from Orlando, Florida. He's an advocate of the Second Amendment of the US Constitution, which protects the right to bear arms. Good to have you back with us, Joseph. In the civil lawsuit filed in Boston, the Mexican government says gun manufacturers have been negligent and complicit in driving the violence that Mexico has suffered from, particularly at the hands of drug cartels and other criminal organizations. What do you make of those claims?
Well, as always, thank you for having me. As far as those claims, I have not read the petitions. I have not read the lawsuit. I've seen no documents at all. However, it sounds like the Mexican government needs to probably look within itself, within its own borders, within its own government, within its own government's corruption. The world knows that the Mexican government has had a history of corruption within its government, within its borders. And I suspect if they have a weapons problem, that some of those weapons actually came from those complicit within the Mexican military, within the Mexican police, and so forth, giving those guns to these criminals that operate within the Mexican borders and take advantage of the Mexican citizenry. So this notion that American gun makers have been part of the problem, I'm not so sure that's going to be successful. And as a person who is an advocate of the Second Amendment, but also the United States Constitution as a whole, it doesn't sound sound at all.
Okay, looking further into Mexico's claims, it argues that, quote, gun companies design, market, distribute and sell guns in ways that they know routinely arm the drug cartels in Mexico. It also says the companies design the guns to be readily transferable on the criminal market in Mexico. These are damning allegations. Should they at least be investigated?
Well, the allegations itself, the allegations themselves, uh, respectfully, objectively, doesn't sound like they hold too much water. But if it needs to be investigated, it needs to be investigated by the government within its government. That being the Mexico government needs to look at themselves and what they've done over the decades to their own people with the rampant, continuous corruption within that country. And I think that as your analyst and as your reporter today, and to maintain some objectivity, I should leave it at that.
Now, you've previously run as a candidate to become a circuit court judge in Florida. I'm wondering if such a lawsuit was presented to you, a lawsuit by a foreign government looking to pin the blame on gun violence on US gun manufacturers, what would you do to such a petition?
Well, respectfully, I'm not a judge, even though I ran. However, if a foreign government did that, it probably would be a jurisdictional limit or jurisdictional matter, and it would probably be dismissed because it probably would need to be brought in federal court and not in state court.
Okay, and I've been reading some of your thoughts on gun ownership in America, and you particularly support the African American community in terms of gun ownership. Why do you have that view? Why is it important, in your view, that Black Americans do bear arms?
Well, the fact of the matter is, all Americans have the right to do so by and through the Second Amendment. What I have said in the past has to do with the history of Black Americans, some being the descendants of those who were once considered chattel. That means they were once considered not human, they were subject to the slave trade, and so forth. And I would ask you and your viewers to look to, as an example, the Louisiana Black Codes of 1806, whereby a Black person would need permission from his or her slave master to have a firearm, I should say, just to go hunt for the slave master. So given the fact that those rights were not afforded to us, it is my position that Black Americans and all Americans should embrace every single right that's afforded to them by and through the great Constitution of the United States of America, including the Second Amendment. So that is the cornerstone of my position and argument.
Okay, Joseph Haynes Davis, we will have to leave there, but it was really good to get your thoughts. Thank you again for joining us.
Always. Thank you.